Welcome to the Thriving Farmer Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Kilpatrick. Our mission is to inspire, educate, and celebrate sustainable farming. We believe that you can build a profitable, sustainable farm that gives you true farm freedom. Join us as we talk to farmers, innovators, educators, and entrepreneurs to glean their top takeaways in business and life.
This podcast is brought to you by Farmhand. Farmhand is the all-in-one software platform and virtual assistant built by and for independent farmers. Through a simple text or email to Farmhand, you can instantly offload admin tasks, automate your CSA, update your website, and sell more to your customers. With zero startup costs or long-term commitments, farmers are reporting an average of 6+ hours in time savings and 20% in sales growth each week. Learn more and take the quiz to see how much you can save by partnering with Farmhand. Visit farmhand.partners/podcast. That's farmhand.partners/podcast to learn more.
Hey, Thriving Farmers, Michael Kilpatrick here with yet another episode of the Thriving Farmer Podcast. And today my guest is Will Harris, a fourth-generation farmer and owner of White Oak Pastures. His regenerative farm maintains a zero-waste ecosystem that supports 10 species of animals and produces everything from high-quality meats to organic fertilizers, demonstrating their commitment to land, livestock, and the community. Will, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Michael. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Absolutely, Will. And I think we were chatting before we got on that you don't remember it, but you and I ran into each other in D.C. a number of years ago. We were flown in for some sort of organic hill days, and you made quite the impression on me as being, that rugged farmer from the South. And it was just, a pleasure to meet you then. And again, a pleasure to have you on here as well.
I'm delighted to be with you today. I bet you we didn't do much good when we were up there.
Well, it's one of those things. I feel on some of that, it's just, again, and forgive the cynicism here, but it's like they feel like sometimes they just have to have FaceTime with us, so we feel like something's happening, and in the end, they still make the rules how they want them.
I think that's very well stated.
Yeah. So talk to us a little bit. Let's go way back because I recently read your book. That's, every morning I try to get up between 5:30. And one of the first things I do is try to read a few pages of a nonfiction book. And yours was one I was working through January and February. Talk to us a little bit about how you came onto the farm and because your journey does not start organic. It starts very different.
Yeah, so my father was the third generation of my family to manage the farm, and he is the generation that converted it to a very industrial monocultural cattle operation. Mm-hmm. And he was very successful in that endeavor. He had a good run. I never wanted to do anything except run the farm as an industrial monocultural cattle operation. That's what my dad had done, and I loved it. I went to the University of Georgia, majored in animal science, came back, graduated in 1976. I came home. I ran the farm for 20 years as my dad had run it, monocultural cattle, industrial cattle operation, and made money doing it. We didn't make a lot of money, but I never had a year I didn't pay taxes. And we didn't have any debt, and we were pretty good cow people.
Yeah.
But then I changed my mind in the mid-'90s and made some really radical changes.
Mm-hmm. And talk about that journey, because you talk in the book about, just the kind of you started seeing things, and talk a little bit about kind of what you started seeing that made you like, maybe we don't want to do it this way.
This is not to my credit, but it honestly requires saying that, I pushed the limits about as far as a person could push them. If the label instruction on the pesticide said a pint, I might use a quart. If it said on the animal injection, whatever it was, antibiotic, whatever it said use 2 cc's per 100, I might use 3 or 4 cc. I pushed the limits. Mm-hmm. And probably as a result of that, I saw the unpleasant consequences and just didn't like it, and chose to do it differently. And it was a fairly abrupt decision, and I implemented it fairly quickly. And it was not a great economic decision. I went from making money every year to not making money for a few years, but we got past it.
Yeah. Now, at that time, too, were you also starting to delve into direct to consumer, or at that time, were you still doing direct wholesale for the animals?
Well, I went from selling live cattle to really not knowing exactly what I was going to do with them. I didn't plan through that very well. I don't know exactly what I was thinking that day. I did wind up, I started marketing some direct, not much, much as I could, but it wasn't very much, sides and quarters and whatnot. But I was still having to sell some live cattle at auction or however I thought I'd get the best return. But I did that for a few years till I figured out the grass-fed business. I had been a confinement feeder, and the grass-fed business seemed like a good idea, but I didn't know how to do it. And this is in the mid-'90s. There wasn't a lot of information out there on how to do it back then.
Correct.
I know now there were other people in the country experimenting with how to do it, but we didn't know each other. And this is before the internet was a thing. So who you knew was who you knew, and the rest of them were just people you didn't know.
Yeah, there's no listservs and no directories and no conferences really about grass-fed at that time.
No American Grass-Fed Association or no wherever, or the organizations weren't there. There were just so few of us doing it.
Yeah. So then you started doing some retail, and from what I understand, you also started working with places like Whole Foods. When did that start to happen?
And that was incredibly fortunate for me because I was not doing very well economically. It was selling what we could, but we just weren't able to sell enough product with my limited distribution to make it work economically. But I was very, very fortunate. By the early 2000s, it was becoming more discussed. Grass-fed beef was becoming more discussed. And we actually were able to sell Whole Foods Market and Publix Supermarket the first pound of American grass-fed beef that they marketed as American grass-fed beef. And that really was a great thing for us. It took off, and we had some really good years. It like all good things, it eventually went away, but we had some really good years there.
Yeah, because I think you talk about how eventually they just started to drop your product in favor of cheaper overseas product.
Yeah, in 2015, the USDA changed the rule for product of USA. Prior to that, to be labeled product of USA, the cow had to be born, raised, and slaughtered in the United States. When they made that change, it allowed any animal to be marketed as product of the USA if value was added here. Then the animal could be born, raised, and slaughtered in Uruguay, New Zealand, Australia, 20-something other countries. And if value was added here, it was product of the USA. And value added was very loose. It could be repackaging or grinding or slicing or pretty much anything they did with it.
Yeah.
That really, really destroyed the margins of American grass-fed beef.
Absolutely. Yeah, because you went from actually having a protected product to, it's like literally slapping a new coat of paint on a car and calling that value added. And now this car that's produced in another country, it could be, sold as made in America.
And arguably, it misled the consumer. The consumer, when they saw a product of the USA, just assumed it was a true product of the USA, when in reality, it was just bad. I was not there the day it was done, but I'm pretty sure that big meat packers used their influence on bureaucrats.
And lobbying.
But now, the good news is, here in the last month or so, they changed that rule back.
Really?
Yes. So they gave them a year and a half to do it.
Okay.
But by January of 26,
Okay.
The old Product of USA rule should be back in effect, and the animal has to be born, raised, and slaughtered in this country. I hope that doesn't get changed, but that I'm
Yeah.
shocked. I'm shocked that that improvement was made.
Yeah.
And I hope that it persists.
Well, I think that's something that most of the farm lobby in the U.S. can get behind. I mean, I can see Farm Bureau getting behind that and all those places because their stated goal is to protect American farmers. But again, we all know that lobbying is where it's at.
Lobbying is where it's at, and I have really, you made a couple of statements there that may be right, but they may not be. I have ceased to predict who's going to line up on whose side. Money matters, and there's a lot of money in the hands of these lobbyists, and really odd things happen. But I am delighted that rule appears to be going to change. It's the first real positive change I've seen in a long, long time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, that's good. Talk a little bit about, because you have gone to a lot of your own on-farm processing. Talk a little bit about what kind of was the premise behind that.
Well, when we picked up the business from Publix and Whole Foods, we simply couldn't provide the product using the outside packers I was using. Up until that point, I had small independent packers that were selling me their excess capacity, and it was a negotiation every single week. I would call and say, "How many can I bring?" They say, "You can bring 6." I said, "I need to bring 12," and they always won the argument because they owned the packing plant.
Correct.
And they were good. They were good people, wonderful people.
Yeah.
They just had limited capacity,
Yes.
and they were good enough to sell it to me, but they couldn't sell me what they didn't have. So I could not handle the level of business that the grocery stores were offering me at that time. So we made the painful decision to build our own on-farm slaughter, USDA inspected slaughter.
And how much of an investment did that end up being? So before you could open the door?
I think that it was about $3 million back then. This is in the early 2000s.
So probably about 4 million now.
I think it'd be a lot more than that. I think it was about 3 million at the time, but we have continued to spend on it. We added a poultry processing plant. We added an order fulfillment center. We added a lot of other things. So we've got about $7 million invested in it now, and we're investing another $2 million in it right this second. The movement from wholesale grocery,
Yep.
to online delivery requires a lot more freezer space. I didn't have much freezer space, so we're adding a lot of freezer space and some other things right now.
Okay.
If any farmer wants to go in the meat packing business, then I want to be sure I tell them what little I know. I want to help them. But I don't ever encourage farmers to go in the meat packing business. It would be so much better if someone else could do that for you. I've been in it now for nearly 20 years, and I've not enjoyed one day of it.
Okay. And what would you say the biggest challenge is? Just the government regulation?
Yes. The biggest challenge is staying compliant with the regulations, and I'm not critical of the regulations. The regulations are there because there have been times when somebody somewhere did something stupid or dishonest or misleading or whatever, and that caused a regulation to be put into place, and now we got to comply with all those regulations, and the compliance is difficult and expensive.
Yeah. So then you're a USDA, so explain a little bit. That means that you have an inspector on the floor at all times?
7:30 to 4:30 Monday through Friday. That's correct. Actually,
Okay.
we've got two. We've got a red meat plant and a poultry plant.
Okay.
And we were granted a certificate of inspection, and that's a big deal, and I'm very grateful to have it. Two, in fact, one for the red meat and one for the poultry. And that's kind of like the deal, loosely, the deal between, in my case, White Oak Pastures and USDA. And it says that we will do certain things, and you got to do them. And in return for that, they will provide us with that inspector.
Okay, so you actually don't pay the inspector's salary.
USDA does pay the inspector.
Okay.
Yeah, we if I work them overtime over that 7:30 to 4:30 Monday through Friday, I have to pay that.
Gotcha.
But keep in mind, the inspector is not there working for me. He is there to be sure that I am compliant with the regulations. So if he doesn't help cut meat. If he's not supposed to. He does his job, which is to be sure that I'm complying with the regulations.
Yeah, because I remember I visited a small plant up in Virginia at one point, and the inspector was there on the floor. They wouldn't let us. We were trying to take pictures, and they didn't want their picture taken, which was interesting. They were, looking at livers or different things and saying, "Nope, this one's good, this one's bad." So, definitely very interesting, that whole process.
It's interesting they wouldn't let you take their picture. I've never had. My guys have never been reluctant to do that.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I really don't know. I mean, I could surmise a few things, but I'll leave it at that. Yeah. So then, how many years between the red meat and the poultry plant was there?
How many years?
Yes, between opening both of those.
Let's see, probably 6 or 8 years.
Okay.
And the economically, the red meat plant, I've told you I hate for people to have to do that. But I'll also say that economically it has been a very successful thing for me. And that's just the other side of the story.
Yeah.
The poultry plant has not been successful for me. We've struggled with profitability in the pasture poultry business. And I'm not trying to dissuade anyone from pursuing it. I'm just saying that for a number of reasons that I can tell you, it has not been economically successful for us.
Yeah. Now, how many birds are you processing a year through that typically?
And we were processing about 1,000 chickens a day, 5 days a week, and much smaller numbers of ducks, guineas, geese, and turkeys.
Okay. And then, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel at one time you guys were having quite an issue with eagles going after some of your poultry.
We did. We had a terrible issue with eagles. I thought it was going to break me before we figured it out. But a very sharp young man that worked for me figured it out. And it was a very simple solution, but you don't know what you don't know. But our free-range chickens are truly free-range. I mean, they were out in the pasture. I had houses for them that were on skids that we pulled around. And we fed and watered at the house. And they did a great job staying near their house. So as long as we moved it every day and kept plenty of feed and water there, they just didn't travel much, which is great. I thought it was really clever till the eagles got there. And I had guardian dogs. I do have guardian dogs, Great Pyrenees, Akbash, Anatolian Shepherds. And they do a great job keeping predators out of my birds at night, but they're nocturnal. And in the daytime, they go. The dogs weren't restricted any more than the chickens. In the daytime, the dogs would go to the woods and go to sleep. And it was okay because I didn't have many daytime predators.
Yes.
But then the eagles were daytime predators, and they would I tell you, they were just wanton killers. I don't begrudge them killing what they wanted to eat. That's tied into nature. But they killed and killed and killed. But I took a lot of pride in the fact that my chickens were not restrained. We didn't have the poultry netting around them.
Yeah.
My poultry manager started putting poultry netting around them, and I knew, and we all knew that wasn't going to keep the eagles out, but it kept the dogs there.
Ah.
So the dogs couldn't go to the woods, and that really, it did not eliminate my losses to zero, but it brought them down to a very workable level.
Mm-hmm. Where it wasn't just a complete free lunch anymore.
Correct.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, because I think, unfortunately, they've been wired for centuries to kill, and they probably don't know when to stop.
Yeah, I mean, the eagles are beautiful.
Yeah.
And while it really ticked me off to have them kill several hundred chickens because they could, it's just instinctive behavior. I get it.
Yeah, yeah. Talk a little bit about the zero waste policy you guys have. So I know that you try to use everything that goes through there. Talk about that, kind of what you've developed.
Yeah, I'm very proud of it, and we call it zero waste. Now, we have paper and plastic and stuff that we haul to the recycle at the landfill. I don't know, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the animal material.
Mm-hmm.
And we generate about 9 tons a day, 5 days a week of packing plant waste. That's the eviscerate, the gut fill, the non-marketable bones, the feathers, the head, just stuff that we can't sell.
9 tons a day.
We sell a lot of stuff that we didn't used to sell, but there are things we just don't have a market for. So we load that packing plant waste on a dump truck and haul it to a remote part of the farm. We move it around a little bit where we do our composting,
Mm-hmm.
and we dump the packing plant waste, that 9-ton dump truck load of stuff, and it's ugly. It's ugly. It is really ugly stuff. And we mix it with peanut shells or wood chips or whatever other carbaceous material that we are given. I've not had to buy carbon up to this point. So
Wow.
At some point we may have to.
Yeah.
I got the guys that run that are really, really good at it. They know how much carbon material to put with how much nitrogenous material. We don't have a compost turner. We take a big Caterpillar front loader and roll it over.
Mm-hmm.
But we do keep up with the temps on it, and follow the protocol so that in X amount of time, as long as we keep it above 100 and whatever degrees,
Correct.
it's done.
Yeah.
It's done. We used to spread it immediately, but we've had experts in to advise us, and they now tell us that if we'll let it sit for a year, let the compost sit for a year after the composting is over, it becomes more less bacterial, more fungal. This is what.
Okay. Yep. Mm-hmm.
And it's better when it's more fungal. And so and if it's with their bones, their whole bones in it. We market a lot of bones, but there's certain things, skulls, for instance, we can't market. If we let it sit for a year, those bones become very porous, and they break down better in the pasture. We fixed a lot of flat tires when we put fresh bones in the pasture. But if we let them sit for a year, then they don't flatten tires.
Okay. So does all that compost go back onto the land, or do you sell any of it, or?
No, it all goes back onto my farm.
Okay.
And this farm is 3,200 acres, and we've got another 2,000 that it's not contiguous here, but it's within 6 miles of here. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we spread it on the after it's a year old. We spread it on the land, and it's magic.
Mm-hmm.
It's magic.
Yeah. Okay, so then, like hides, what happens to your hides?
Hides go two ways, maybe 3 ways. A certain number of them we can sell as really expensive vegetable tanned hides. And we are not smart enough to do that vegetable tanning. We have tried repeatedly, but we just can't get it right.
Yeah.
We have that done at a facility in New York. We ship them up there.
Okay.
Most of the hides go for rawhide pet treats.
Okay.
We fixed a big old semi van and put a big mother of all LP gas heaters in it.
Okay. Yeah.
Circulate that air through it. We make pet shoes, and we're able to market all of our hides through one of those two routes.
Wow. That's got to be a lot. How many hides a day?
About 25 hides a day.
That's a
5
lot.
days a week. 5 days a week.
Yeah. Yeah, we in our farm store here at the farm, we have a company called Farm Hounds, and I think I think I've seen your label maybe on some of those bags.
We do. That's a customer of ours. It
Yeah.
sure is.
Yeah.
Good people.
Yeah. Yeah, our business manager here, before she started working for us, she ran her own natural pet food store. And so she knew exactly what she wanted to bring in. So yeah, that was the first brand she went after. So
Where is that store?
we are in Southwest Ohio now. So yeah, when we met 12, 14 years ago, I was in upstate New York, farming up there. But my wife's family is from down here. So that's why I moved down here about 3 to 4 years ago. So I'm here with Ari, the founder and CEO of Farmhand, and we're talking about your website and keys to making it effective. Ari, talk to us a little bit about some keys for your website.
I've got 5 keys to an effective website. So the first is, let's make sure it's updated and it's clear and readable and easy to understand. There's a lot of websites I encounter that leaves you to ask, is this farm in business? What are they selling? Who do they serve? And you want to make it really, really comfortable for those customers that find you to join your email list and swipe their credit card. The second is make it mobile friendly. 50% of web traffic now is coming from mobile phones. A lot of websites I see that farmers have been created for desktops. They haven't really tested them on mobile phones. And when you look at them on mobile phones, they don't quite look the way they're supposed to. So keep that in mind, that when you're setting up a website, make sure you look at what it looks like on your mobile phone. The third is have a clear goal for your website. Don't have 5 CTAs, call to actions, telling you to go to 5 different places. What's the one thing you want people to do? And let's drive people towards that primary goal, whether that's joining your CSA, joining your email list, or something else. The fourth is make it really easy for customers to find you. Where are you going to be? What are the markets? What are the locations? What's your address? How do they contact you? Make it really, really simple to find that information, because most of the customers are probably going to interact with you via that channel. And then the fifth is the more under the hood item. Let's make sure it's set up for SEO, or search engine optimization. So that means you've got the right tags under the hood, you've got the right content in the right pages, and that all works together to ensure that you are found when people are searching for you on Google search or Google Maps or any other search engine. And the key information there is really around locations, products, and you really want those in place. So when local customers you rank higher. And all the things I just described, we can provide for you at Farmhand. So there's no extra effort to even understand how to do this. You just need to say, yes, I want it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Ari, you've got some customers that are really excited about Farmhand. They were frustrated with additional fees for features and a lackluster experience for CSA members with many steps to sign up. So Deep Roots Farm knew it was time to migrate away from another software platform where it seemed like you paid extra for every feature and still missed key capacities. Seeking a more streamlined solution that could delight customers and grow with the farm switched to Farmhand mid-season and their membership skyrocketed. They saw an 8 times CSA member growth and 70% increased weekly revenue.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. It can be really difficult to make those different systems do the things you want it to do, whether it's your Squarespace Square website or it's your CSA management system that you thought could do certain things but can't actually do those things. But when all those systems are working well and you've got good service around it and you've got good communications to your buyers, that's when you start really seeing the results. And that's exactly what happened with Deep Roots, that they were able to actually execute their strategic vision for their CSA that was previously not able with their older setup.
Hmm. And where can they find out more information about this?
You can go to farmhand.partners/podcast.
Okay, so then with the on-farm processing, with everything you're doing, how many team members do you have?
I think the total employee count today is about 170.
Okay.
Our payroll is $100,000 a week, 52 weeks a year. And we're the largest private employer in the county. We're in Clay County, Georgia. And Clay County, Georgia what was the poorest county in the United States of America in 2020.
Wow. So then let's talk a little bit about developing that workforce, because farming is not something as simple as, hammering a nail into a board. There's some skill that goes into a lot of it.
There is. I'm very proud of our employees. We've got fantastic employees. And I'm not proud of what we pay them. I pay them all I can, but they're not. It's not.
Yeah.
I wish I could pay them. I wish I could pay them more, because this is such an economically impoverished area. Mm-hmm. We can kind of get the best of the best, and not a lot of really good jobs to compete with. Mm-hmm. And another thing that's happened that's a really great help for us is that there are a lot of this is across the nation, actually a couple of international people too. There's a demand, a thirst for learning how to farm like this. Mm-hmm. So we have a lot of really great employees that come here to learn, and we know they're not going to stay here, and that's okay. That's fine. Mm-hmm. We actually started an intern program several years ago. And we take 6 or 7 interns per quarter, 4 times a year. So that's 27, 8 a year.
Yep.
And I'm very proud of it. We don't. They do work. We pay them. I don't know what we pay them, about minimum wage, not much more than that.
Yep.
We don't work them where we get the most good out of them. They have a curriculum.
Okay.
So they know when they get here that this first week they'll be with cows, the next week they'll be with hogs, the next week they'll be with eggs, the next week they'll be on down.
Yes.
So we do work them. We work them. We pay them. It's good, and they learn a lot, and it gives us a chance to test drive them. And we usually make job offers to about half of them.
Yes. Yeah. Gotcha. And so those then help fill the ranks. Now, obviously, finding housing and all of that is a challenge too. I think you talk about in the book how you kind of manage that.
This little town, Bluffton, Georgia, I'm sitting in the middle of it right now. Bluffton, Georgia sits in the middle of my farm, and my office is in the middle of Bluffton, Georgia. So
okay.
Bluffton it is the oldest town in the Creek Indian Treaty that's not on a navigable waterway. It's a very desirable farming area for the coastal plains. They're not compared to Champaign County, Illinois. But Bluffton, Georgia has never had any industry except agriculture. Never had a railroad, never had a mill, never had a factory. When post-World War II, when farming industrialized, Bluffton really got hit hard.
Gotcha.
20 years ago when I started acquiring houses and lots, and there was only 2 businesses in town. One's a post office that's open about an hour a day, and the other one is a local peanut receiving station that's just open a couple of months a year, and that's all there was.
Okay.
So we started buying houses and lots and storefronts when they'd come up for sale, and with no real plan. They were just real cheap, and I wanted to fix them up.
Yeah.
They were gone into disrepair. But now we made the decision to move the operation to Bluffton. It used to be on the farm 2 miles south of here. It's not far.
Yeah.
We moved it to town, and we have started an RV park and fixed up these houses for employees and others, and I'm just really pleased. We got a restaurant, we got a lodging, temporary lodging, bed and breakfast kind of a deal, and just a number of things here in town, and I really like it a lot. Breathing life back into Bluffton was not the mission. The mission was the land and the livestock. But it just worked out that Bluffton improved, and when it did, it became a source of great pride. And now it's as important to me as the land and the livestock.
Well, it sounds like you've really started to build community too.
We got a great community. And these young people, they're raising families, and we have every Thursday night we have a little special deal going on at our restaurant up here. People, and the families come, and it's amazing. People,
Yeah.
the woods are full of kids playing. This was a dead town. When my children were growing up, Bill, I had 3 children. And there was another family, and I was 3 miles south of town. Another family was 3 miles the other side. They had 2 children, so that.
Yeah.
That was it. That was the whole crop.
Really? Okay. Yeah. Well, I think, it's interesting with how, and I don't really know exactly how it started, but I think one of the aspects is the incredible independence of Americans. We tend to spread out for somehow we decided that automobiles was the way to go. Urban sprawl was the way to go. But all that has done, I feel, has really broken down relationships between people, because now so many people spend so much of their time in their vehicles instead of standing on sidewalks, not walking next to other people. And I think, if you look at in Europe, these little tiny towns that everyone congregates in, and then you have all the land around it for farming, that to me is just such a superior model. I may be wrong, but I think, getting people together, getting people in community with each other, and part of a shared mission, which it sounds like that Bluffton is really kind of a shared mission now. It's all about producing food that you guys ship all across the U.S.
We have a lot of company here. I told you we got
Yeah.
a restaurant, and we got a lodging, and people come and they, most of them say nice things about the farm, and I appreciate it, but they really like the town. They just really, it's like Andy Griffin, if you remember that.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that was the one show we were allowed to watch growing up, so I know that really well. Yeah. Talk to us about your book. What was the premise for kind of writing that, and what were you trying to communicate with that?
Yeah, it never crossed my mind to write a book. I graduated from the University of Georgia 50 years ago, and I never read many books. So, we were contacted by agents for Penguin, Random House, Viking. They offered us the opportunity to write a book, and I told them I couldn't do that. My mind works in a very cyclical manner, not linear. You need to be able to have the idea and put it down on paper. So I turned it down, but ultimately we wound up hiring. They hired a young woman from California who is a ghost writer. And she actually wrote the book. We spent a lot of time together. I have 3 daughters, and she's about the same age as my middle daughter. So I feel I had another little girl, and she came here, spent a lot of time, and we had an every Friday afternoon appointment that was 1 to 3 hours on the phone.
Yeah.
And she was a sweetheart, but she would work the hell out of it.
Yeah. Yeah, and so that's kind of how they pulled it out of you then.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And there won't be a volume 2. I'm
Okay.
very proud of volume 1. There won't be a volume 2.
Gotcha. Now, you've also had the privilege, I think, of going on the Joe Rogan podcast. Talk a little bit about how that came about.
Joe Rogan, we've done it twice. Last year and then the year before. And I was asked to be on a little news blurb, Fox Radio, Fox TV.
Okay.
Stuart Varney, I believe, is the name of the guy that was going to interview me. And I tell you, he beat me up pretty badly.
Okay.
I mean, it was ugly. And
what was his complaint, I guess, or what was the reason for him of beating you up? You know, likable guy from Georgia.
yeah, well, I thought so. I had been quoted in some publication about my ideas on people like Bill Gates owning land.
Okay.
And that's what he wanted to talk about, which is fine. But I guess I just wasn't giving him the answers he wanted, and he really started pushing me, wouldn't let me finish a sentence, and then he finally cut me off pretty well. And when he did, he wins, I lose. I mean, it was his show. He had the microphone. I was in this office, and Jenny, my daughter, was there with me. I said, "I'll tell you what, I want you to film video what I was going to say." So I did, and they when the blurb came out, we put ours out, and Joe Rogan, and it did pretty good on social media, Instagram or whatever. So Joe Rogan saw it and called and offered to have me on his show. And that was a very nice thing to do. I didn't know who Joe Rogan was at the time. I do now, but
Yeah. He's definitely, I really appreciate the format he has, because it's not the 30-second or 90-second soundbite. It's the actual, you get to know a person and get to actually hear the whole story.
It was a great experience, and I'm grateful for it. But we did that. And then a year later, he invited me back with my daughter, and that went well too.
Very cool. And I'm assuming that probably pushed you guys with your online sales substantially?
Yeah, it did. Well, the first time, we just didn't have much to sell. The second time, we were more prepared for it, and it was quite a boost. And I tell you, you might find this interesting, but I built this business as a pure 100% wholesale grocery provider.
Okay.
The year that just ended, December 31st of 23, we actually sold more product online than we sold wholesale. So that's how our business has evolved.
Really? So then, are you just buying tremendous amounts of boxes and dry ice and all that stuff to ship out?
Just exactly what you said. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Our e-com business, because we do e-com here too, we sell very different products. We sell plant products, like elderberry cuttings and seed potatoes and willow sticks and all sorts of things like that. We even we'll ship you a rosemary plant in the mail if you want one. But I've been blown away by how fast that has grown. But yeah, I think people are, because they have the internet, they have access, and if they want what they feel is the best, they'll buy it and they'll pay for it.
It's been a blessing for us.
Yeah.
I don't know how this business will evolve. I mean, I went from being a pure monocultural cattleman to being a wholesale provider, and now, I mean, I just can't believe how it's evolved so rapidly in 20-something years.
So then your wholesale side, who are you still selling to?
I don't sell to Whole Foods.
Yeah.
I think they threw me out. They said I quit. I don't know how that happened, but we don't sell them anymore.
Yeah.
And it ended shortly after my first Joe Rogan appearance. We sell to Publix, Supermarket, Kroger, Giant Eagle, several other regional grocery stores.
Okay.
It's good business, and I'm grateful to them for it. I don't think we can make a living wholesale. Wholesale's just changed. And now, when it changed when this imported grass-fed beef came in as product of the USA, as we discussed earlier. Now that may change back 18 months from now, I don't know exactly what will happen with that. We'll see.
Yeah, that will be very interesting. I'm wondering if it stays that way, because you're right. It could go back within a minute, and you could have people in the U.S. really trying to scale up for that, and then get the shirt ripped off their back, because some lobbyist was successful with one senator. So, yeah. Where do you see you guys evolving in the next decade?
Well, I'm 70 years old, so I don't see myself doing much of evolution in the next decade.
Okay.
I still help run the business. I work every day, but I do have two daughters and two in-laws and some very talented non-family members in management here. And we meet once a week and discuss which way to go with the company. And it kind of pursuing what we were just saying, it has to stay highly fluid because things change so rapidly.
Yeah.
And I don't know. You know, I used to be a real cheerleader for this kind of farming. I didn't get on the road and pass out pamphlets. But if people wanted to come here and learn, and I was happy to share with them, and I still am. But I had people that came here to learn and tried it and wound up not being successful, and it's pretty easy to do. So I'm very guarded in urging people to do this. I want them to. My vision is for there to be hundreds of White Oak Pastures, independently owned by the people that run it. I don't mean associated with us. I mean 100 operators like White Oak Pastures, scattered all across the country. That was my vision, and it's still a very fond thought for me, but it's really hard to do. The industrial food is so powerful in its messaging that they can keep the business.
Yep.
And B, it throws out so many unintended consequences that we all have to pay for, and that causes it to be cheap. And we talk about how cheap the food is. Well, the purchase price is cheap. The production price is not cheap.
Nope.
It's just that the cost. There's a dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico as big as the state of Connecticut, and the food companies and farmers that cause that won't pay for it. We'll all pay for it. There's a species of plants and animals and microbes thrust into extinction every day. And what does that cost? That's a lot. I mean, those creatures had a role on this planet. And you take the global warming. I don't know what to make of that, but it's certainly not good. The pesticides in the environment, the water. There's just so many things that are costs from the industrial food production model that is borne by everybody. So, that's just the way that is.
No, I agree with you 100%. Here at the farm where we are here in Ohio, we spent 3 years looking for this property. One of the things that's super important for us because we grow fruits and vegetables is the water supply. So we got a water test. It came in, it looked fine. But what I didn't realize, I didn't know what to look for, is the salts, the chloride, the sodium, the aluminum. And it turns out that all three of those are basically, because as we pump out of the aquifer, accumulating in our soil at unreasonable rates. And literally have turned our greenhouses into brown houses where stuff just doesn't want to grow. And it's because of the decades of conventional agriculture, and those salts come out of the fertilizer right down into the aquifer, and we pump it right back up. So, I would say it's probably increased the price of our food here in the farm. I have one guy that's 50% of his time is spent dealing with having to make different, biological sprays up, and we're injecting pure carbon and all the stuff that I never had to do at my other farm in New York because we just didn't have those salt issues. So you're absolutely right. It's the cost of conventional food. The conventional food system is not being. There's no reckoning for it with the price you pay at the grocery store. Yeah. So, no, that's great. What advice would you give new farmers?
There are three legs on the stool. There's the production leg out there in the pasture, in the field. That's the fun part, and that's the part that we all want to focus on and know about. And you got to. It's an essential leg. The next leg is processing. Agriculture guy, so that's what I'll talk about. But people don't buy cows and hogs and sheep. They buy beef and pork and lamb. You've got to figure out how to make that transition. I hope you don't have to do it yourself. I hope you can find a way to get that done, but it's got to be done. And don't go into business until you get that figured out. And the third leg is the distribution and sales. You got to get it to them.
Yeah.
We produce $30
Correct.
million worth of product a year, and I told you I'm in the poorest county in America. That's not exactly where you want to sell that. So be sure that you don't have so much passion for this thing we do that you don't pay attention to all three of those legs, and be sure your bases are covered on.
No, that's great advice. Now, you did mention a little bit ago you're not so, I guess, bullish on small farms. Do you feel there's a certain size threshold that a farm needs to get to before they can make it sustainable?
No, and I don't know what I said that caused you to think I don't respect small farms.
No, that's not what you said. You said you weren't as positive, I guess, maybe on people going into this because of the
But
okay.
that's
Yeah.
not. Yeah, yes, but that's not size specific.
Okay.
I think that I don't think we can make decisions about size. We can the top side. You can be too big. This is a highly replicatable model. It's not a highly scalable model.
Gotcha. Okay.
And to be real, and I feel strong about that. And White Oak Pastures, if anything, came into it too big. I came into it from big industrial ag.
Yes.
It never occurred to me to downsize. Should have, but it just never occurred to me.
Yeah.
I see people do incredible things with very, very tiny little spots of land.
Okay.
And if you're in the right market, it's incredible what you can do in terms of productivity with a tiny piece of land. I would never want to get in the discussion of deciding how big it ought to be. I think that's an impossible
Okay.
determination. But the only thing I'll say about it is, in the linear industrial model, right?
Yes.
More is more is more. And scaling up is what happens. That's why we've got such big companies
Correct. Yeah.
everywhere. This is not that. This is cyclical, not linear. Scale is not the answer.
Gotcha. Okay. That's good clarification there. Will, anything else you want to share before we go?
Oh, I don't know. I'm old and got a lot of stuff I can talk about. So you have to tell me what you want to hear. But I do appreciate being on your show today. Thank you very much.
No, we definitely appreciate you. And again, I think one thing you did say is, running these type of businesses is work. It's challenging. It's hard. There's stress involved. And I think that's one of the things my wife and I, the last couple of years of running this business, is that it's not for everyone, but it's an awesome life if you can make it work, and it's a great place to raise some kids. So, yeah.
Yeah, if I had, we were successful in the industrial cattle model, but my children would not have come back. My daughters would not have come back to it. I had 3 daughters. I have 3 daughters, and two chose to come back to this model. So that that alone is enough to be a temptation. You got to figure out how to make it work, and
Yeah.
that can take a lot of different shapes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'll have to make it down there one of these days. I think we've kind of got a little bit of a hold on traveling for another year or so. But once we get through that, I definitely want to make it down there and visit you guys.
Well, we got lodging and dining, and I'd love to have you as my guest.
Okay, well, I appreciate that. Well, again, thank you so much for coming on today. Appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me.
So there you have it, another episode in the books. So I'd love if you would hop on over to iTunes and leave us a rating and a review. Those mean everything to us. We love to hear what you're thinking. If you have a podcast guest that you can recommend, please pop on over to the Thriving Farmer Podcast website and leave us a review. That's thrivingfarmerpodcast.com.